Hey, thanks for reading the Bible with me. I am back in the gym hiding because it is the world's best hiding spot. No one will ever think to look for me here. Um, we are in Luke 14:25 to 34. Let's jump right in. A large crowd was following Jesus. He turned around and said to them, "If you want to be my disciple, you must, by comparison, hate everyone else, your father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even your own life. Otherwise, you cannot be my disciple. And if you do not carry your own cross and follow me, you cannot be my disciple. But don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there's enough money to finish it? Otherwise, you might complete only the foundation before running out of money, and then everyone would laugh at you. They'd say, "There's that man who started that building and couldn't afford to finish it." Or, "What king would go to war against another king without first sitting down with his counselors to discuss whether his army of 10,000 could defeat the 20,000 soldiers marching against him? And if he can't, he will send a delegation to discuss terms of peace while the enemy is still far away. So you cannot become my disciple without giving up everything you own. Salt is good for seasoning, but if it loses its flavor, how do you make it salty again?" Well, we can never accuse Jesus of pulling a bait and switch. He invites us to follow him. He tells us that when this life is over, the reward of membership in his kingdom is unlike anything we can imagine. But he also warns us that it won't be easy living here in the meantime. The kingdom of God is present in those who believe in Jesus, and yet, for now, we are exiles in a foreign kingdom. It can often be a hostile kingdom. Jesus explains the kingdom of God is a prize worth everything we could ever own or dream of. Admission to the kingdom is a free gift from God because of what Jesus did. But accepting that gift and joining the kingdom can still be very costly. There is a path between here and the kingdom that will be full of trouble. Jesus tells his listeners and he tells us that the journey to the kingdom must be our greatest passion. Following Jesus isn't just some casual choice that doesn't really affect our day-to-day life. It needs to be an obsession. Compared to any other treasure or priority in our life, following Jesus will have to be given absolute primacy. Anything that holds our attention or adoration more than God and his kingdom needs to be burned to the ground, or it will get in the way of our path to the kingdom. The kingdom of God is worth far more than any earthly fortune, and it's possible that we may have to lose our earthly fortune to hold on to it. If anyone tries to sell us a gospel that offers prosperity and freedom from pain, it's not the gospel Jesus offered. He made that pretty clear. I want to linger on the last two verses about the salt. More than one of the gospel writers recall Jesus describing his followers like salt. I've heard speakers talk about how salt preserves and heals, or even how it kills a fertile field when it's poured over the soil, but in each reference, Jesus talks about salt being salty. In each case, he says it is utterly useless if it loses its flavor. I don't think we need to stretch the metaphor too far. The essence of being salt is that it is salty. It makes the stuff around it salty. It gives flavor. Ask me about the cinnamon buns I accidentally made last week with unsalted butter. I've been given the world's best cinnamon bun recipe. If you can't come for coffee, you're just going to have to trust me. That tray of cinnamon buns went to the chickens. It was tragic, and I really don't want to talk about it, but I share this deeply wounding episode in my life to illustrate my point. Much like the yeast and the mustard seed, a very little bit of salt makes a very big difference. But if the salt I put in my cinnamon buns wasn't salty, it couldn't make that difference. Isn't this a weird thing to say, though? How does salt lose its saltiness? It's a chemical compound. Saltiness is one of its essential properties, isn't it? Well, yes. But if you do a quick online search, you will find people complaining that their salt doesn't taste salty. I know what you're thinking, and I agree. People are crazy. Regardless, are you as curious as I was? Apparently, if under some conditions salt gets moist, it can dissolve. And when it evaporates, it leaves behind something that looks like salt, but isn't salty. So there you go, no longer salty salt. And I can tell you right now, it would ruin a good batch of cinnamon buns. I think the point Jesus is making is that followers of Jesus are supposed to have an essential property that flavors them and their surroundings. A very little bit makes a very big difference. And that flavor is what we are created to be and do. If we aren't doing what we're created to be and do, we're useless to the kingdom. I think Jesus might be warning us to be sure we are salty. If we don't have a flavor unlike anything else in the world, and if we aren't influencing our world, are we even salt? Followers of Jesus are salt. If we aren't salty, we aren't salt. We might be the residue left behind as our parents' faith was watered down and eventually evaporated, but we aren't salt. Has your faith essentially changed who you are? Only belief in Jesus and his death and resurrection can essentially change a person. There were a lot of people following Jesus around the outskirts of Jerusalem, but many were only there to be entertained. Jesus warned them that a kingdom member didn't just look the part in public. They were essentially changed in the deepest place of their identity. They were salt, and they flavored their environment with their presence, and quite frankly, being anything less was a total waste.